Okay, welcome back. I started up a new scene here which is completely blank. There's nothing in it, no particles, no ice trees, no nothing. And I'm going to go ahead and start to show you the different types of particle emissions that we can create with ice. Now, as I said in an earlier video, we can create particle emissions with ice from almost, not exactly all, but almost any type of object in XSI. So, in this video, let's go over the specific objects we can use for creating these particle emissions. We can create particle emissions from, as you saw, geometric objects like polygon meshes, and we can even create from surface or NURBS objects here. But we can also create emissions from things like curves. So, if I go to the modeling menu by hitting 1 on the keyboard, and I go to create and then curve, I can draw cubic by CVs here. So I can draw a curve real quick over here, like so. Then right click to exit that tool. And here's my curve in my scene. What I can do is select the curve, go back to the simulate menu, and go to ice, create, and emit particles from selection. And if I hit play, sure enough, there's my particles being emitted from my NURBS curve. Alright, so let me go ahead and open up the render tree or the ice tree here for that by hitting Alt 9 on the keyboard. I don't need this little mini explorer on the side anymore, so to hide it, I'll click on this little arrow icon there. Okay, by doing that, XSI was smart enough to create this emit from curve compound. If we click on this little globe earth option here, it looks like a little earth in there, it opens up the preset manager. Now, if I go to the emitters category here under task and make sure you're in particles, not deformation, you go to this emitters category and you can see we have different emitters. We have emit blast, we have emit from curve, which is the one that we're using right now. We also have emit from surface, which you saw earlier when we created particles from a polygon disk object. So, depending on the object that you create particles for, XSI will choose one of these compounds for you. For example, it'll choose the emit from curve compound whenever you select the curve and create particles with ice with that curve selected, which is what I did in this example. So we have these different types of emitters we can use, like position, volume, and so on and so forth, and we'll talk more about those in a moment. Alright, so let me go ahead and close that. I'm going to go ahead and select the curve and the particle cloud and hit delete on the keyboard to get rid of it. Now let's see how we can create particles based off of a volume. This works a little bit different than when you're used to, and you're going to see how neat this is. Let's go to primitive, and let's go to polygon mesh, and let's create ourselves, say, maybe we'll create ourselves a cube. I'll close that PPG. Now this isn't a modeling tutorial, so I'm not going to go over modeling too much, but I'll just go ahead and hit U on the keyboard to go to polygon mode, select some of these polygons and use Control D on the keyboard to quickly extrude some of these polygons. Just want to show you something here real quick. I'll take this object and make some extrusions and things like so. Just kind of randomly doing stuff here. Don't even have some kind of special polygon object planned out. Okay, so we have this strange cube object or whatnot. Now, if we select this object and we go to create emit particles from selection, what we get is a particle cloud that emits off of the surface of this cube, and particles kind of just fly out into space. Now, what if we wanted to emit particles inside the cube and that's it? Kind of like if it was a room filled with fog, or maybe if it was a cloud that's stationary and it's just hanging out in the sky in the background or something like that. That's where particle volumes come into play. And this is where this can come in really useful. With the point cloud selected, let's open up the ice tree. You notice that we have this emit from surface compound. Well, let's open up the preset manager, go back to emitters, and this time let's grab ourselves an emit from volume node. Left click and drag and drop that into the ice tree, and then close the preset manager. Now we have this brown emit from volume node. What we want is to get rid of this emit from surface node here and replace it with this emit from volume node. So to do that, let's go ahead and make some of these connections. We'll take the cube node here, and we'll take its value and plug it into the emitter 1 node down here, or port. just like the way that it's connected with the emit from surface. So let's left click and drag and connect that right there to the emitter 1. Let's select the emit from surface node here and hit delete to get rid of it. Now you'll notice that this node here becomes red. The reason for that is because ICE is trying to tell you, uh-oh, if you play this simulation now, you're going to get an error because this node isn't connected to anything. This ICE tree isn't getting anything connected to it. So we'll take this and connect it here to port 1 to make it happy again. Okay, now that that's done, we can go ahead and collapse that and play the simulation again. Now what you notice is that the particles instantly appear inside the volume of this cube. So you can create a sort of a little proxy object that represents a cloud, and you can create that easily using polygons. And then you can create this method of emitting from volume so that you can create these static particles that are inside the volume. And that's great because it allows you to create these, you can create all kinds of different things like fog or mist inside of a room or an environment that doesn't move around, or you can create also clouds in the sky, things like that for your environment, and really anything that you want. So emitting from volumes is extremely useful and can come in pretty handy. So let me close that. I'll select the emitter as well as the particle cloud and delete that. Now let's see how we can create particles from nulls. We can also go over here to the primitive menu, select on null. Now we created this null object. Well, let's select the null object and go to ICE create, emit particles from selection, and we can actually shoot particles from the null object. So you're not just limited to say polygon spheres and disks and cubes and things like that. You can also emit particles from a null object, which can become very useful. You can then take this null and you can constrain it to say a character's head, so it looks like the character's head caught on fire. You can do different things like that, which is a lot of fun. Now we also have the ability to emit particles from a certain position in space. So how do we do that? Well, it's pretty simple. Let's select the particle cloud and open up the ICE tree here. Right now we have an emit from null compound here, which XSI created for us because we created particles from a null. Let's open up the preset manager, and under emitters we'll go to emit from position. So let's go ahead and select that and place it here in our scene. And of course, like we did before, we want to replace this emit from null. So let's go ahead and let's delete that. Let's bring this this ICE node over here and connect its emit to the first port. And now what we're going to do is we can set up a position for this emit. The emission here doesn't need the null anymore. It just needs a position, because what this compound does, it allows you to emit particles from any position in space. So if we play now, the default position in space is 0, 0, 0, which is the center, the origin of our 3D world. So if we open up the parameters for the emit from position compound by double clicking on it, we can select the emit position up here. So we can say for Y 10 units up, and then maybe 3 units over on the X. And now we come over here and we play the simulation again. You notice that the particles are emitted from a point in space located 10 units up in the Y and 3 units over to the right in the X, which happens to be this location here. So we can actually choose specific grid points in space to emit these particles from, which can be pretty useful depending on the situation you find yourself in. Okay, let me delete those. I'm going to end this video here, and in the next one we'll talk about how to emit particles from multiple objects and from groups.